So the sheriff's going to do it.
The regular meeting of the Washington County Quorum Court will come to order. And the county judge is absent. So I would say before the prayer and the pledge, we should choose someone to chair the meeting.
I've got my hand up.
You have, yes, sir.
I'd like to nominate Butch Pond to take the meeting over tonight.
Second.
Is there any other? Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry for being late, Mr.
Oh,
I was going to nominate Miss Eva Madison tonight.
okay.
Thank you.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Is there any other nominations? Yes, sir.
I'll nominate Harvey Bowman.
Oh, get out of here.
Do we have a second?
Second. Oh, no.
Okay, now
I'm just messing with
I'm going to
I think nominations need to close before we get daffy before we've started.
We have
Thank
a motion and a second to close nominations. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Now let's see. All in favor of Butch Pond, raise your hand. Okay, 2. If I'll vote for me, that's 3. Okay. Now, all in favor of Eva Madison? 6, 7. Okay. We have 7 in favor of Eva Madison. Let's see, how many of us are here this evening? Okay. All in favor of Harvey? Okay.
Sorry, Butch. It's all right. I was just messing with you.
Well, I actually am leading the prayer and the pledge, and I have asked our Sheriff Tim Helder to give our prayer tonight. So if you would all rise and join the Sheriff in prayer.
A little curious though, Eva, didn't Bill nominate Butch? And then he voted for you. I don't know. A little curious. Would you pray with me? Father, thank you, God, for today. God, just this weather. We know that you're in control of it, and it's just exciting every day that we wake up. I want to thank you, especially today as we celebrated Ty's 1-year recovery from the shooting. God, and just his progress, we thank you for that. God, I want to pray for the folks that are serving on behalf of this county and their districts and on the Quorum Court. Just pray you give them clear minds and to make great decisions. God, I thank you for all the blessings you've given me, and I pray these things in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would you please call the roll? I'll just call her Miss G.
Daniel Balls.
Here.
Harvey Bowman.
Here.
Robert Dennis.
Here.
Lisa Eckney.
Here.
Anna Harbison. Joe Kicklack.
Here.
Ronnie Lloyd. Tom Lundstrom.
Here.
Eva Madison.
Here.
Sue Madison. Owen Maxwell.
Here.
Joe Patterson. Butch Pond.
Here.
Bill Ussery.
Thank you. You have the agenda in front of you. We have a couple of items that we need to add. There is a resolution authorizing Judy Neal to perform a marriage of Bob Jordan and Allison Walker. And let's add that. Let's do that so they can leave between, let's do it at between 6 and 7 so that those folks can get on out of here if that's okay. And then we are going to add the, we forgot about ORT, but I'm grateful that Mr. Gardner was on top of things and contacted us. And so Mr. Lester has prepared the ordinance bringing forward what county services sent on. Now, just to make sure we're correct, county services actually referred it to the finance committee, but it didn't get to the finance committee agenda. So I asked Mr. Lester to put it on the agenda tonight. And so I would ask for a motion to approve the agenda as amended. Okay, all
The
those.
agenda is amended.
Is there a second? Okay, there was a second. Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda with these two items added. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? Okay. Oh, yes. Let's see. Let's put it before the finance report. So after the judge's report. Okay. So we'll now have our citizen comment period for any members of the public who would like to address the court. We have a 15-minute comment period with a 3-minute limit per speaker. You may speak on items on the agenda or other items of concern if you'd like to have, if anyone has a comment that they'd like to bring forward. And if you are speaking on a specific ordinance, there will also be time to comment on that before we vote. So. Come forward if you would. We know who, many of us know who you are, but if you would state your name for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Renee Bybee, citizen of Prairie Grove. My family's lived in Washington County for 30 years. I'm here this evening to speak about two items that are in some aspects intertwined. The first is an ordinance to create an exception to Washington County Code. Arkansas Code 1414-805 states in part, a quorum court may exercise any legislative authority with regard to employee policy and practices of a general nature, including, but not limited to, establishment of general vacation and sick leave policies, general office hour policies, general policies with reference to nepotism, or general policies to be applicable in the hiring of county employees. Legislation applying to employee policy practices shall be only of a general nature and shall be uniform in application to all employees of the county. I believe that creating an exception for one individual is a violation of that law, in addition to the Washington County Code. The position is a rated position and is subject to JSAP policies and procedures. Page 9 of the employee handbook states that all county positions must remain open for a minimum of 5 working days before hiring. Page 10 states, if an elected official or department head chooses to screen applicants before interviewing, 10% of the applicants, or a minimum of 3, must be interviewed before a job offer is made. No job offer may be made before all applications have been reviewed and the position has been open for 5 working days. This position that is in the ordinance was never advertised as open, and creating an exception for one person when there could be a multitude of qualified individuals with grant administration experience is discriminatory in nature. It has recently come to my attention that the oversight of community sewer systems has been reassigned to the Environmental Affairs Department. The job descriptions for both the Grant Administrator, Public Utilities Director, and the Public Utility and Assistant Grant Administrator contain multiple paragraphs regarding oversight of community sewer systems. I respectfully request that the job descriptions for the Grant Administrator, Public Utilities Director, and the Public Utility and Assistant Grant Administrator be reevaluated by JSAP and be scored appropriately to be in line with the current job duties as they are assigned today. With regard to community sewer systems, I hope that the court will have a public hearing on any matter regarding these systems prior to repealing any part of Ordinance 2016-24 or 42, and take into consideration what residents who live in these areas are living with on a daily basis. It is absolutely vital that there is someone on a local level that has the knowledge and ability to help the people that live in those subdivisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bybee. Yes, ma'am. Come forward and state your name, please.
Hi, my name is Zoe Armstrong. I am part of the Washington County 4-H. I just wanted to come down and say thank you for helping us get our new County 4-H agent, and it's a full-time one, so yay. We wanted to just thank y'all and everything.
Thank you.
And if I can, Madam Chair, say thank you to the 4-H club that provided the food for us this evening. So I want to say thank you very much. We enjoyed it.
Yes, ma'am. Come forward and state your name.
Hi, my name is Autumn Gregg, and I'm with Washington County 4-H. I just wanted to personally thank everyone who came and helped judge. We had an event on Saturday. It was a dairy foods event and then a speaking competition that several of our 4-Hers participated in. So thank you to Ann Harbinson and Butch Pond for judging our dairy foods. And thank you to Lisa Ecke, Joe Kicklack, Daniel Balls, and Harvey Bowman for judging our speeches. Those are very helpful. Your comments and everything that you guys provided at that will help the 4-Hers in the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am. Come forward and state your name, please.
My name is Dawn Whittington, and I'm very concerned about the transfer of the step systems there in the county because we're affected by that, and changing it to the Department of Environmental Affairs. It just upsets me because we finally had some things that were going to go right, it looked like, and now all of a sudden we've been changed again, and I don't know how knowledgeable the individual is that has taken that position, but it concerns me because we were used to working with somebody that was very knowledgeable and worked very hard on our behalf.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else? Okay, we'll close our public comment period. You now have before you a set of minutes from our February meeting, and I will say they're 2 pages long. Yes, J.P. Madison.
I move approval of the minutes with glee. I read them very quickly.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Any other comments or discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Okay. The minutes from the February 9th special meeting are approved. J.P. Madison, you're recognized.
Madam Chair, I move that once again we suspend the rules and read the ordinances by title only.
I don't think we need discussion on that. Is there discussion on that? Okay. We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and read all ordinances by title only. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Okay. So we'll now move to the added item, the resolution authorizing Judy Neal to perform a marriage ceremony. And J.P. Dennis, I will recognize you. Sorry, it took me a minute.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Lester, would you read the ordinance, please?
A resolution authorizing Judy Neal to solemnize the marriage of Bob Jordan and Allison Annabelle Walker on May 11th, 2017 in Washington County, Arkansas.
I move the adoption of this resolution.
Second. Okay. We have a motion and a second. Yes. And I believe the couple may be here, as I understand.
They are. Yes.
Hello.
Stand up.
Yeah. Yeah. Y'all stand up so we can see you and congratulate you. Thank you for being here. Okay. Is there any discussion on the resolution? Do we have public comment on this?
My left will say they're free to go if they'd like.
Yes. Do we have to have public? Okay. Okay. We have a motion, a second, and we'll need a roll call on this. If you'll call the roll for J.P. Dennis's motion to pass this resolution. Oh, no.
Okay. Ann Harbison?
Yes.
Joe Kicklack?
Yes.
Roddy Lloyd? Tom Lundstrom.
Yes.
Eva Madison.
I can't vote.
Oh, okay. Sue Madison. Joel Maxwell. Joe Patterson. Butch Pond. Bill Ussery. Daniel Balls. Harvey Bowman. Robert Dennis. Lisa Ecke.
Yes, the motion passes. Mr. Jordan and Ms. Walker, it was not personal as the presiding officer. I can't vote tonight, but you all are free to go unless you just want to watch government in action. So, best wishes to you. Okay. So now we'll move on to item 7 on the agenda, an ordinance to allow Sharon Lloyd to be employed by Washington County. And Mr. Ussery, J.P. Ussery, this is your ordinance. I'll recognize you.
Thank you. Mr. Lester, would you read this by title only, please?
An ordinance to allow Sharon Lloyd to be employed by Washington County and thus create an exception to Washington County Code Section 2-192, subsection 3, subsection A.
Thank you very much. I would just like to say, before we kind of get into this, the main reason that I brought this forward is because we just need to figure out what we need to do to follow the rules. And it's quite apparent that this is what our ordinance says, and we've got to do something with this. And so it needs to be addressed, and that was why I brought this forward. And so I'm looking forward to the discussion tonight. Hopefully we can get this guy put to bed. If I'm correct, this is our second reading. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. So, J.P. Madison, I'll recognize you.
I have a point of order. And this is in line with the comments that Ms. Bobby made earlier, but Arkansas Code 1414-805 does talk about powers that are denied to the Quorum Court. And it specifically says, legislation applying to employee policy practices shall be only of a general nature and shall be uniform in application to all employees of the county. And I remembered from my days in the legislature that there is, I think in the Constitution, a prohibition on special and local legislation. So I thought there was probably something similar in county ordinances. And it is really unthinkable to me to have an ordinance for one person that has that one person's name in it. I'm deeply bothered by that. So I think this may be totally out of line. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So, Mr. Parliamentarian, I think we have to make a ruling on the point of order, so we'll need the county attorney's advice. I'm going to give the job back to Harvey.
Yeah.
Or Butch.
Well, this is an interesting point. The competing issues here are the county has an ordinance that, one, is not general in nature, in my opinion, which has been what I've said from the beginning, where it says that, there's a rule and then the court created an exception if the court approves the exception. And so I don't know how else you would go about doing this other than invalidating the entire rule. And in creating that exception, I think is in contradiction to Amendment 55, where the Quorum Court does not have the power to hire or fire or make those decisions. That lies with the county judge. So I believe that Mr. Ussery made this due to the fact that your own ordinance required that the court have some sort of input. In doing so, it says that an elected official cannot be employed by the county for a period of 1 year at the end of their term unless the Quorum Court approves it. And my thought was the only way to approve an ordinance was with an ordinance. I would agree that this particular ordinance is not is very specific and not general in nature, and you may be correct. I'll say you're correct because I think I'm correct in the initial thought, but I believe that is correct, that it's specific, but it's specific because your ordinance requires it to be specific. That's my thought.
I'm not sure what that means.
So, Madam Chairman?
Yes, J.P. Dennis.
So in my simple mind, does that mean you're saying don't vote on it? I'm not saying yes, vote yes or no. I'm saying that we shouldn't vote, period. That's what I heard you say, maybe.
It may require, I think that we should not vote on it, and if an ordinance or somebody wants to issue something that is less specific and just as to the job, and I know Ms. Ecke had this conversation with me, that would probably be more appropriate ordinance, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, let me make a ruling on the point of order. I'll go ahead. I recognize JP Dennis, so I'll go ahead and recognize JP Lundstrom to speak on the issue.
Well, my problem with it is when our ordinance says an elected official, Sharon Lloyd was never elected. She was appointed. I don't know how great a distinction that is. Our county attorney would have to define that. But she was not elected the way the rest of us were. She was appointed to fill an unfulfilled term. So I think, in my mind, it's just left up to the judge to hire who he decides to hire. So I don't know if there's an ordinance required at all. Just leave it the way it is. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I'm going to go ahead and recognize JP Balls since he hasn't spoken on the point yet, if that's okay, JP Madison. JP Balls.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Lester, you said at our last meeting that you looked and said even though she was appointed, she was still considered an elected official, correct?
That's right. In your ordinance, it is defined, elected official is defined as someone who is appointed. Not just an elected official, but also someone appointed to an elected position, elective position, yes.
Okay. Well, I guess, and this is, what are we supposed to do? We have an ordinance that says this. If it needs to be changed, we can change it. But if we do say, okay, we're not going to make an exception and she can't have the job, what happens then? Because I just want to get this done and over with so we can move on with it, because I'm tired of getting a lot of questions about it from other people. And I think that's something we need to wrap up tonight. But let's say we do say, okay, we're not going to allow this exception. What happens then? Or if we do nothing, what happens? Because I've read the Amendment 55 and with the general provisions. I don't understand, like, what's the point of us having ordinances if people don't have to follow them? And so I think that the county judge should follow the ordinance like other elected officials. So I guess my question is, if we do say, no, we're not going to make the exception, what happens? Or do we just let it go?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I think ultimately, the court says yay or nay, and then the judge is either got to follow that or not follow it and say that it doesn't apply. And then, ultimately what happens when you have a disagreement is this ends up in litigation, which will end up in the circuit court.
JP Madison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to ask our attorney a question, if that's okay. When there is a conflict between state law and a local ordinance, would not the state law prevail?
That's correct.
Thank you. JP Essery.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. The reason that I left her name in there, I could not see any way that we could deal with this if we were to remove her name, because it has everything to do with that one individual in this one case, and it's very specific, and I don't see any way that we can make it so that it's not. I don't see how we could leave her unnamed because of the specific nature of this particular issue. I'm not trying to embarrass anybody or anything else, but that's what it is, and we need to deal with it, I think, as it is. And so if we could just figure this out tonight, it'd be very helpful, I think, to all of us. Thank you very much.
I think the original ordinance is out of order, which makes this one out of order. That's what I'm saying.
So JP Madison raised a point of order, which falls to the chair to rule on whether the ordinance is in order or not. And the advice that I'm getting from our county attorney, who serves as our parliamentarian for this body, is that he does not believe the ordinance is in order, because he believes that the original ordinance is not in order. So if I'm fulfilling my duties as the chair correctly, I need to follow our parliamentarian's advice and rule that the ordinance 7.1 is out of order. So the point of order is granted? I don't know the right term.
Which original ordinance is next?
Thank you. Which original ordinance are you saying
was previously out of order before this one became out of order.
Yeah, it's referring to the 2-1923A. It expressly says that an elected official is prohibiting from working for the county for a period of 1 year after leaving office. And then it has this exception, unless approved by the quorum court, which is, I believe, what J.P. Ussery was trying to accomplish through that exception. And Mr. Lester doesn't think that ordinance is proper.
Couple of questions in to follow up there. When you're reading that unless there's an exception approved by the quorum court, where are you reading that at? Right, in what part of the handbook?
Do I know?
It's in the ordinance.
It's in the.
It's in 2-1923A.
Okay.
Not in the handbook. It's actually in the Code of Ordinances.
Okay. And can you kind of just walk us through why you feel like that ordinance is not appropriate?
Well, it has a lot to do with this legislation here that says, or this state law. It says the legislation applying to employee policy shall be of a general nature. If you look at Amendment 55 to the Arkansas State Constitution, where it defines the powers of the county judge, concerning hiring, like the quorum court doesn't have the power to hire county employees. I mean, that's expressly reserved for the county judge. So when in creating this legislation, and I've said this before, if the rule or if the ordinance said that no elected official shall serve for a period of 1 year after they leave office, and that was it, then I think that's an absolutely appropriate policy, because this court gets to set employee policy, because that isn't giving anybody any power other than saying we're not going to allow that. And there's a lot of policy that has those kind of provisions that are just straight across the board. You can't do this, you can't hire this. When an exception is made that says unless we as the quorum court say it's okay, then you're taking the hiring practice away from the county judge and you're vesting it now with the quorum court, which is what was prohibited by Amendment 55.
So you're saying the ordinance to make an exception is out of a line, not the ordinance of an elected official not being rehired within a year?
The severability.
Well, no, because they're together. I mean, it's one ordinance. It's one piece. It's not. They're not two different pieces. I mean, the entire ordinance is out of line. If it were stricken, it would need to be rewritten as just an elected official cannot be hired by the county for a period of 1 year. It's not two or three different. It's not two different sentences. It's all one phrase in there, I believe, and it's all within the same little subparagraph.
I may be reading from a different spot, so that's why I'm looking for some clarification. In Employee Handbook, Section D.
It's in the code.
It's in the code.
Right.
It's not in the handbook.
But the Employee Handbook was adopted as an ordinance.
Right, but this is a separate provision in the code. So
because this just states in Section 4 that elected officials are barred for rehire for 1 year. So that's why I'm trying to.
So they're in. Okay.
So, I guess last clarification: do you feel like the quorum court, according to 1414-805, has the ability to set general hiring policies, reference to nepotism, et cetera, that falls within our bounds to say, if we would have worded that differently, if it would have just said elected officials are barred from rehire within 1 year, that is in accordance?
I would say so, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I have J.P. Ussery, and then I'll recognize J.P. Bowman.
I guess my question is how do we get this resolved? Because it seems to me to be very, very clear that we've got a rule and we're not following it. And number one, if that was in there, if that one statement wasn't in there, you said yourself that we'd be very justified in doing this. And so I don't see how that sentence makes any difference at all in what we're trying to accomplish here. I mean, we've got rules, and we just need. I'm trying to get clarification on why we're not following the rules. And if you could help me with that, I would appreciate it, because so far I'm not seeing it. I mean, I don't think we're on the same page here. Thank you.
I would say, with all due respect to the court, there are a lot of rules that are not followed by this court particularly. As a matter of fact, these two ordinances that were brought to our attention didn't follow the rules. You have specific rules that state these things will be circulated 8 days prior to. In other words, if a JP has an ordinance as something they want on the agenda, they are required to get it in. There's not an exception. So, I mean, that's kind of what we're looking at. I mean, there are a lot of things like this. In this rule, my point is, I don't think the rule is valid. I think if it were challenged, it would not be upheld as a valid rule because of that exception. That's what I'm saying. That's my thought. That's my legal opinion on the issue.
Okay, I'm going to recognize J.P. Bowman, and then I've made my ruling, and I think we're going to have to sort this out later. We're not going to come up with the answer tonight. I want people to be able to ask their questions, but we're going to need to move on. J.P. Bowman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brian, have there been any rulings of this situation on a state level to get a review and legal opinion about this situation that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of.
Have you checked with them about that? Or?
Yes, I've looked. I've looked through AG opinions. I've looked through case law. I've not seen anything that addresses this specific issue.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, we will move on in our agenda then to the judge's report, which I understand J.P. Pond will be giving the judge's report. I'll recognize you, J.P. Pond.
Yes, ma'am. We had to the members of the Washington County Quorum Court from County Judge Joseph Wood, a board appointment at the request of the Mayor of Elkins. The mayor recommend and the judge recommend that Ms. Susan Unger be appointed for a 5-year term to the Washington County Library Board. That I believe it's the Elkins Library. Is it the Elkins Library Board or is it the Washington County Library?
It's the County Library Board. She was just the former director of the Elkins Public Library.
Okay.
I think the judge had circulated this memo earlier by email, so we all knew this was coming.
This is Michael Musholt his term expired, and Ms. Unger is a former director of the Elkins Public Library. And Ms. Unger has been serving her community in a volunteer basis for a very long time and a very loyal servant to the community. I don't believe Ms. Unger is here this evening.
So,
but do we need a motion?
We do. We need a motion to approve the recommendation.
I move to approve this recommendation.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve the judge's nomination of Ms. Unger to the library board. Is there any further discussion? My understanding is we can do a voice vote on this. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? Okay. Congratulations, Ms. Unger. Okay. We'll now move to, I'm sorry, J.P. Pond, was there anything else on the judge's report that you needed to update us on?
I didn't see anything else on the report. That was all we had on paper.
Okay, I didn't want to cut you off. Thank you.
No, thank you.
So that we now are moving to our ordinance on Ozark Regional Transit. And trying to remember, somebody help me out. Who's the vice chair of the finance committee? Is it? It's Joe. Okay. Well, I'm listed as the sponsor of this, but I shouldn't take part in that as presiding officer. So is there someone that would take the reins? Thank you. J.P. Essery, can I recognize you then to handle the ORT ordinance?
Yes, we can. Brian, can you read this for us, please? I'm sorry, Mr.
This is an ordinance appropriating the amount of $51,970 from the road fund to the road 1/2 cent sales tax budget for 2017.
Thank you. So if we could just go ahead and move forward with this. Did you all want to explain where you're at? Could you please? Is that okay?
It's fine. Mr. Gardner, if you'd like to come up and if you'll state your name so we've got it on the minutes.
Yes, ma'am. For the record, Joel Gardner, Executive Director, Ozark Regional Transit. We've talked extensively over the last couple of months in regards to whether or not to maintain Ozark Regional Transit at 122,970 or keep it at the 77,000. That was approved in December. And we've gone back and forth. I've answered as many questions as I possibly can. And if there's any final questions, I will take them before a vote is taken.
J.P. Ecke.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
How are things going?
Pretty good. It's actually pretty cool today. We've got the record companies on property. They have stripped, they've taken all of the burnt out hulls, started late Monday and crushed all the burnt out hulls. Yesterday they started stripping down the building. Tomorrow they take out the footings and finish cleaning up the burnt asphalt and everything else. We're cleaning up. We've got buses in to keep us running for probably the next 12 months before we have to start sending them back. Mm-hmm. But in about 6 months, I've got more buses in the pipeline to cover us for the next 6 to 8 month period of time. So the thing that we're running out of right now is daylight. Every bus that comes in has to, by our standards, has to go through a tip-to-tail inspection, even though it's come from reputable districts throughout the U.S. For us to get a tip-to-tail inspection on a bus, it's about a week. If you can imagine inserting a new police car, fire truck, a new staff vehicle into anybody else's fleet, that tip-to-tail inspection is crucial to ensure that we know what is there, what the performance is, and what parts are needed. So it's we need daylight. So that our guys that are in the maintenance crew just don't go completely crazy. So we're doing some shifting around and getting some extra hours out of them by changing some work schedules. And we should be rolling for the next 12 months or so and anxiously awaiting the opportunities from the federal government for us to be made whole.
You sound very optimistic.
Yes, ma'am, I always am. If I'm not optimistic, I don't know what else to be.
You're on vacation, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'm glad to hear it.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
J.P. Bowman.
Has there ever been a clear answer to what caused the fire in the first place?
There's nothing clear at this point in time. 2 Thursdays and Fridays ago, we had upwards of 22 people on our property, everything from Michigan all the way out to California, inspectors, guys that had computer systems with them and cameras with them that I've never seen before, where literally they had a camera this big and the end of the lens was this far away from a certain part of a bus, and the guy took probably about 20 pictures at different angles. They're looking at everything. There is what some of the speculation is the perfect storm. We run maintenance on those vehicles. We do high idle maintenance, looking for ticks and problems and that type of thing. And when we run those high idle maintenances, tailpipes have a tendency to get hot. Well, with a 30-mile-an-hour wind going up against the tailpipe, there's speculation that that might be one of the problems that caused it, because that 500-degree tailpipe now is upwards of 700-800 degrees when it's slung this low from a bumper. That may be one of the things, but there's nothing definite pointing at anything right now. But that is a suspect. Perfect storm, according to the firefighters and the inspectors, with the winds, the heat, and everything else. If there had been no wind, or it had been blowing in a different direction, or it started at a different location, we might have lost a bus, but not a whole fleet.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'm conversing over here with Mr. Lester to make sure I understand my role. I can't actually talk, so I just thought I would share. This was passed out of the County Services Committee, of which J.P. Dennis is now the chair. So, but this is just to restore what would have been the full funding for the year, given our hesitation at the end of last year. And this would just put you back to where you've been,
yes,
give you the flexibility to be a little bit more creative in how you work the buses.
Yes, ma'am. And we would target an April 1st date of making some service changes.
Okay. So I cannot make a motion. That's what I can't do. So
well,
J.P.
I
Harbison.
will make a motion.
Okay.
That we pass and restore this for the rest of this next year and give them a chance with some using different kinds of transportation, trying to increase the usage and that kind of thing. And you've given us several scenarios of what you think you can do. So I do make a motion that we pass this ordinance.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to pass the ORT ordinance. Is there any further discussion? J.P. Keeclack.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I will vote yes on this ordinance. And Mr. Gardner, thank you very much for your leadership during a crisis in public transportation and also for your strong leadership of Ozark Regional Transit. Being a resident and also now learning a little bit more about the operations of ORT, I'm confident that you lead an intentional transit plan for Northwest Arkansas, and I believe that makes us unique in our region. Thank you very much, and please let us know how the Quorum Court can continue to enable a small part of your success.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
J.P. Bowman.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Madam Judge. Or whatever you are.
Excuse me.
Sorry about that. Mr. Carver, I think you've been doing a great job up there. And I know there's been some communication issues that I would like seen done differently.
Yes, sir.
I just please ask you to get back to us and give us evaluations on how this money is being spent.
Yes, sir.
And whether we need to continue to modify those routes to maximize benefit from them.
Yes, sir.
And not depend on us, because I'm surely not an expert on that. But I sure would like to see us try to maximize efficiency on these buses as much as possible.
Yes, sir.
So you'll give us reports from time to time on what's going on.
Monthly.
Thank you very much.
Jeff will actually.
Any other comments? So just to clarify, apparently I can vote. The judge cannot. I can vote. I just can't make a motion. So I apologize to the couple that was here earlier, but I can't veto. So whoever gets to do this next time, I'm looking at somebody else. You'll know for sure what your duties are. So, okay, let's call the roll. Oh, sorry, public comment. Gosh, no wonder it gets confusing. Okay, seeing no public comment, now we will call the roll, Miss Jamie. Yes, she needs to borrow your microphone. And this will need 10 to pass tonight. Appropriation ordinance.
Ann Harbison?
Yes.
Joe Kicklack?
Yes.
Roddy Lloyd?
No.
Tom Lundstrom?
No.
Eva Madison?
Yes.
Sue Madison?
Yes.
Joel Maxwell? Joe Patterson? Butch Pond?
Yes.
Bill Ussery?
Yes.
Daniel Balls?
Yes.
Harvey Bowman?
Yes.
Robert Dennis? Lisa Ecke?
Yes.
10 votes. Ordinance passes. Right? Did I count right? Okay. Okay. The next item on our agenda then is the finance report, and I will just go ahead and give that, but I would ask for someone to assist me in making the motions. So the first item on the finance report is the carryover for 2017. It's 9.1. It's the one with all the attachments. And if I can find it. Actually, it's 9. No? Do you see it? Okay. Yeah, so it's 9.1. It is the carryover for 2017. So, Mr. Lester, if you would read this ordinance by title only.
An ordinance adjusting carryover revenues in various funds for 2017.
So we discussed this at the Finance and Budget Committee last week, and Ms. Barber and our treasurer, Bobby Hill, gave us, we went over all the finances for 2016. This was just places where we were off, and the most notable of which was just the emergency 911 because of an unexpected payment that came in at the end of the year. Otherwise, our treasurer had done a fairly good job of predicting things. So I would ask for a motion. J.P. Harbison?
We passed 9.1.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to pass 9.1. Is there any discussion? Okay. I'm sorry, J.P. Bowman?
I don't see totals on this anywhere. If we got any total of what the total number of dollars transferred back in is?
They were on it. Is it the whole ordinance?
$1,307,101.
Yeah, it's in the.
Okay, thank you.
No, that's 9.3. Is it the right?
Yeah.
I'm not sure it was totaled up. I think that 9.3 was totaled.
Yeah, because there's various.
Almost.
Yeah, they were total.
Well, I see the numbers. That's fine. We can move ahead.
Okay. Any other discussion? Any public comment? Ms. Jamie, would you call the roll, please?
Ann Harbison.
Yes.
Joe Kiklak.
Yes.
Roddy Lloyd.
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom.
Yes.
Eva Madison.
Yes.
Sue Madison.
Yes.
Joel Maxwell. Joe Patterson. Butch Pond.
Yes.
Bill Ussery.
Yes.
Daniel Balls. Harvey Bowman. Robert Dennis. Lisa Ecke.
The ordinance is adopted. 9.2, if you would read the ordinance by title only, Mr. Lester.
An ordinance, an ordinance anticipating and appropriating revenue of $4,000 in the Law Enforcement Grant Fund for 2017.
So this was a grant that we received, and we're happy to have it. So we're appropriating the money.
Yes,
The adoption.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance. Is there any discussion? Sorry, my name was Evan on an earlier draft. So Mr. Lester was noting that it was corrected. So, okay, no discussion. Any public comment? Okay, Ms. Jamie, would you call the roll on 9.2?
Ann Harbison.
Yes.
Joe Kiklak.
Yes.
Roddy Lloyd.
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom.
Yes.
Eva Madison.
Yes.
Sue Madison.
Yes.
Joel Maxwell. Joe Patterson. Butch Pond. Bill Ussery. Daniel Balls. Harvey Bowman. Rick Cochran. Oh, I'm sorry. Robert Dennis. Lisa Ecke.
This ordinance is adopted. The next item is 9.3, and this is the housekeeping ordinance. Yes, if you would read the title. Trying to make sure we get this backwards. But no.
An ordinance reducing the amount of $1,307,101 from line items in various county budgets and restoring those funds to unappropriated reserves. The total amount of $1,194,124 from unappropriated reserves to various budget line items for 2000 and should say 17.
Should say 17. No, it's 16.
Oh, 16. I'm sorry. 2016.
Okay. This is the housekeeping ordinance that we used to do quarterly that we decided to do annually. That basically just takes money that's not spent, mostly from personnel, and puts it back in. So.
I'd like to make a motion to pass 9.3.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to pass this ordinance. J.P. Maxwell, did you have a comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question for Mr. Hill, if he would. I know this is obviously something we anticipated. Is this already accounted for in our reserves in the numbers that you've given us, or will this be an additional amount to add to those numbers?
The cash money I give you, it's included. As far as what Ms. Barber does, I'm not sure on this side of it.
Yeah.
But it's accounted for in my cash.
Okay, thank you.
The treasurer just basically said that this is more of a comptroller budgetary issue, not really a money issue, which is his department. So, J.P. Bowman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I'm confused about why the two numbers don't match up here. We got $1,300,000. We got $1,100,000. Why are those numbers not the same?
So, oh, yes, that was supposed to have been fixed from the. You're right. So what is the right number? We'll need to amend the motion to correct this.
The correct number. This is the correct number.
Okay, so the correct number is actually the one shown in the total reductions, the 1,311,742.
So that should also be the number at the bottom.
I'm sorry?
That should be the same number at the bottom then.
No, oh, no, okay. No, we're talking about two different issues, though. You're right. Okay, so you're asking why the two numbers don't match. So they're not supposed to match. It's basically money going in and money coming out. It's not necessarily the same. It's not apples and apples. It's just different things. Right?
That's correct.
But I think the issue that Mr. Lester thought you were raising is that the total that's referenced in the ordinance title and in the opening lines of Article 1 does not match the total reductions sum of all the numbers in Article 1. So, J.P. Ecke, you made the motion. Can we amend it to reflect the correct number?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to amend the number. Would you, if the county attorney would please state that amount for the record of what we're changing it to, we're amending it to?
I'll reread the title with the correct amount.
Okay, that sounds great.
An ordinance reducing the amount of $1,131,742. Oh, I'm sorry. I wrote a note. My apologies. An ordinance reducing the amount of $1,311,742 from line items in various county budgets and restoring those funds to unappropriated reserves, and appropriating the total amount of $1,194,124 from unappropriated reserves to various budget line items for 2016.
Madam Chair, I ask that we pass the amended ordinance as stated.
Okay, so we've amended our motion, and the second has concurred in that with J.P. Dennis. I think, J.P. Bowman, what the minutia of it is the two attachments that appear after 9.3 in your packet, which is you need a magnifying glass, but nevertheless, those two attachments outline what goes into Article 1 and Article 2 each, so that's going to explain they're just two different things.
Okay, thank you.
So, Ms. Jamie, can you make sure to make in your notes that ordinance title gets corrected, that number gets corrected before it's published? Okay, well, and Mr. Lester will do that too. I just wanted to make sure somebody got that. Okay. Any further discussion on 9.3? Any public comment? Seeing none, Ms. Jamie, would you call a roll on 9.3 as amended?
Ann Harbison?
Yes.
Joe Kiklak?
Yes.
Roddy Lloyd?
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom?
Yes.
Eva Madison?
Yes.
Sue Madison? Joel Maxwell?
Yes.
Joe Patterson? Butch Pond? Bill Ussery? Daniel Balls?
Yes.
Harvey Bowman?
Yes.
Robert Dennis? Lisa Ecke?
This ordinance is adopted. J.P. Ussery, you recognized for item 10 on the agenda.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Mr. Lester, would you read this for us, please, by title only?
An ordinance amending Washington County Code Section 2-18.
And this was at the first meeting. This is actually what we hashed out last year. We just reviewed this at our first ordinance review committee meeting. And what is changing our compensation and on what we're paid for our mileage. And so that's what this ordinance is about. And before we even get started, I have one question. I don't know if anybody here can answer it. But my understanding, if we change it, if we reword it the way that it's stated here, my understanding is we'll have to fill out a mileage form each month showing the miles that we drove, and that'll have to be submitted and logged. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
You don't have to submit. So there's several different ways of doing this. Any mileage that you drive outside of coming to the Quorum Court, for meetings like this, it will be easy for us to keep up with your mileage from your home to here. Any mileage that you drive not coming to a meeting, you would need to send that in.
We don't do that very much.
So that we would have record, you could get reimbursed and that sort of thing. But as far as we can get the meetings when you come here, get that taken care of, so you're not filling out a mileage form every single time.
Oh my. Okay, J.P. Lundstrom. Sorry, I don't know who had their hand up first.
Well, I don't know how Judge Wood is going to handle this, but the way it used to be, we got paid once a year in December for mileage, and it was without taxes. And that's what this is supposed to accomplish here, is it's reimbursement rather than compensation. So it should be tax-free. And I was also told in the previous administration that the county would furnish this mileage information.
I'm sorry?
I was told in the previous administration that the county would furnish this mileage information for us because they already have it in their computer. At the end of the year, just print it out and we turn it in with our taxes. Is that the way it's going to be this time?
Sure.
Well, he was talking about doing it once a month. Yeah,
The way I look at this is, I think that each one of you can choose how you want to do that. If you want it monthly, it can be done monthly. If you want it yearly, it can be done yearly.
But the county's going to do it.
That's correct.
Okay, that's what I need to know. Thank you.
J.P. Maxwell.
Thank you. Since we're partial of the way through the year, do we intend to make this retroactive? And if so, do we need to make this an emergency clause?
Ms. Farber could not be here tonight because her son had a play that she had to attend. If she was here, I can tell you she would say, please, please, please do not make this retroactive. I don't have a vote. I'm just letting you know because I have talked to her about that, and she has expressed her desire and concern for if we have to do this retroactive based upon you, for whatever reason, it's going to be extremely difficult for her. That's all I can tell you.
Truly, we can just. Do you have anything else? J.P. Pond.
What other kind of situations would there be other than coming to these meetings where we'd be turning in mileage?
Well, if you went out, if you had to travel within your district, a citizen, one of your constituents calls and says, hey, we got this big issue with this bridge or this road, would you come out? And you were to actually go out to that place, you can be compensated for that mileage as well. I mean, you don't have to be, but you can be. I mean, that's part of your duties as a quorum court member. So if you travel pursuant to your elected position, then that mileage can be turned in. Or if you were to go to a conference or a training or something as it relates to your elected position here.
J.P. Ecke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't want to make things difficult for Ms. Faber. She does a great job. But the question that comes up in my mind is, if we do make this retroactive, then that means all of the money that the state had to pay or the county had to pay in taxes and APRs would be turned back.
So I think her concern was the way it was set up. I believe that you were getting paid monthly. You were being reimbursed monthly. And so far you've been reimbursed monthly, which means the county has paid you, has taken taxes out, has paid Social Security on that amount. So to undo that is going to be quite the arduous task for Ms. Farber in trying to get that done and then reconciling that with the IRS and explaining why it is that we paid this money in or took this money out, now you're being reimbursed. I mean, it becomes quite difficult for her office to have to go back and figure that out for each person. That's my understanding from talking to her.
Okay, thank you.
J.P. Madison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have some questions about the wording on this, especially after what our attorney just said. But let me start first with my original question in B, where it says, however, justice of the peace may receive per diem compensation for one meeting a year for which the member is absent due to whatever reason. That seems very bizarre to me, especially since now we may be reimbursing people for travel to a meeting that they didn't attend, which would make it be a complication tax-wise, I would think.
Well, you couldn't claim, so you're entitled, pursuant to state law, that if you miss one quorum court meeting, you're entitled to be paid your typical compensation. Now, you don't get your mileage on that. So
okay,
mileage,
that's what I need to know.
Mileage is only available if you actually drive. If two JPs carpool together, only one person can claim that mileage.
Good. Okay, that's the answer I was hoping for. Now, Mr. Lester has just said, if I decide to marry somebody out at Sun's Chapel on Saturday night, I can take that mileage and turn it in. But my first year as a JP, I attempted to have a broader definition of what's reimbursed in our duties, whether we're going to the opening of a new water line in the south part of the county or whether the judge or the attorney at the time assembled us all to come to the courthouse over a lawsuit one day. But this says for attending official, regular, special, or committee meeting of the quorum court. It says that in A, it says that in B, and it says that in C. So I don't, and it says it again in, which I guess is part of C. So I don't understand where this gives us per diem for marrying somebody at Sun's Chapel or meeting with a constituent to look at their sanitary sewer system.
If you go down on C, it starts about the fourth line up, says, otherwise, justices of the peace shall be entitled to receive reimbursement of allowable expenses incurred in the conduct of county affairs on the same terms as other elected officials and county employees within the budgetary limits established by the quorum court on an annual basis. So that's your catch-all. That's your other county business. And I, you know, my thing on this is, and this is in doing this and dealing with the state on this personally, you know, this is kind of you have to make that determination if it was county business or not and turn that mileage in. And so,
well, and I'll just sort of give a more explanation on this because I worked on this with the Ordinance Review Committee last year is really where it started. If we leave it without the otherwise language, then we can't ever receive a mileage reimbursement for anything other than our travel to a meeting. And I think that there's going to be rare occasion, it'll be rare, but there will be an occasion where all of us would agree that a JP should get reimbursed for something. For instance, when I go down to Little Rock for the association meetings, now thankfully I'm on the board and they pay my mileage, so I've never had to seek reimbursement from the county, but it won't always be that way. And so I think we have to allow a mechanism for us to be reimbursed. But I think all of us are sort of the sense that we should use discretion and not attempt to be reimbursed for every little ticky thing because we'll wipe out our budget. And so we need to allow the potential for it, but I think we should all be careful not to overuse or abuse it. So I think that was the intent behind that came out of the Ordinance Review Committee. Because if we don't have that, then we cannot get reimbursed.
Well, it seems to me that there are cases when we should be, like when the judge more or less summoned us all to come meet at the bridge out on the western side of the county in the mud. I think it took me longer to get cleaned up after that meeting than to get there. But those kind of situations, I think when we're requested to come, like when we were requested to go to the federal courthouse that day, I agree with that. So it will provide for that. But if we all start declaring mileage for doing a wedding,
we're going to get our
in the remote corners of the county, we could eat up a budget pretty fast. So I think it's wise for us to remember that and be prudent. So I'm glad to have it cleared up. Thank you, Judge. That's all.
Madam Chair, I do have a question followed upon what Justice Madison said, if I may.
Go ahead.
Aren't we restricted from receiving any compensation for doing solemnizing marriages? Is that included in mileage? JP Dennis just brought that up.
I think that reimbursement for expenses is not compensation. That's what we've been discussing. But I think the court basically sets the policy of the level of reimbursement the court should receive by the level of the budget that we set for it. Our budget is targeted to what our mileage is to and from meetings every year. It's not a budget that is limitless that would provide for all of that. And so that's why it's limited by that budgetary limit. I think technically a JP could submit the mileage or mileage reimbursement for a wedding. I think we would all kind of scowl at that person when they came into the next meeting, right? Because they're going to blow our budget. So I mean, I think we have to allow it, but we set the policy by the amount of the budget we set, is how I think is the best way to do it. But the idea was that we wouldn't be treated any differently from another county employee if you had to go like on a business trip for county or to the courthouse or whatever. JP Bowman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I think I've gotten to know this group pretty well, and I think you're probably all doing similar kind of things that I have. You know, I've driven a lot of county mile roads, just checking out road conditions, see what's going on out there. And I guess technically I could probably charge off all those miles. But I've never charged a single mile for any of that inspection of things going on out here in our county that I want to know personally. I want to see personally. And some of us were asked to go down to the Whitaker Center to judge the 4-H contests. Similar kind of things, or something that kind of falls under our responsibility, being serving a community out here. And those things could all be considered as well, as far as I'm concerned. But I bet you there's not a single individual in this court that applied for those miles. So I think maybe we're kind of straining at very small issues here that we need to move on with. Thank you.
Okay, so just to put us back focusing on the ordinance 10.1, it actually does a little bit more than just the mileage issue, because it is some other tweaks to that ordinance section that the committee worked on. I just wanted to get clarification from Mr. Lester. 10.2, the personal vehicle mileage record form, is attached, but I do not read that it's being incorporated into the ordinance as the required form, because I think there are a lot of us that don't want to have to read our odometer. So,
I agree with that. There's nothing in the ordinance that is stating that form has to be used. And I talked with Ms. Farber about that, but she was concerned that because it was included at the committee, that if we didn't include it here, that was somewhat misleading. But I think that we can redo this, and as long as the county has, I think the county judge can say, okay, here's the form that we're going to use, where we don't have to do the odometer readings. The law requires that you have some sort of verification of the mileage. And so for a long time, odometer readings were used. That was way back before we had Google Maps that can verify a distance for us fairly well. When I had a contract with the state, and we got reimbursed for mileage on particular things, we didn't even keep up with our own mileage. They figured that themselves. So if you went somewhere you didn't get the additional mileage, if you had to travel a little bit further in your car to attend a meeting, it was from point A to point B and back, and that was it. So I think as long as it's uniform in what you do, that we can use it's okay to use a different form and calculate it that way, just however that works.
So I think we have to do what we're going to do with the ordinance, and then just entrust that our county officials and department heads are going to implement it the best way possible and the best way for the county. So can I recognize you again, J.P. Essery, to get us moving on this?
Yes, ma'am. I move that we approve these changes.
Is it our first reading?
Second.
Wait. This is just the first reading. This is a regular ordinance. So if you want to, that motion is technically out of order, so we need to suspend the rules and...
Yes, I'd like to suspend the rules, go ahead and read it on second time by title only.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second to suspend the rules, put this on the second reading by title only.
So
we already had a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? Okay.
Mr. Lester, will you read this for the third time for us, please?
Yes. An ordinance amending Washington County Code Sections 2-18.
Okay, now I'd like to move that we go ahead and approve this as read.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Nope.
We need to suspend again.
We need to suspend again to go to the
Suspend
third
rules
reading.
and let's read again for the third time.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to advance this on to the third reading by title only. Oh, wait, we do. Sorry. We have all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
Okay, Mr. Lester, will you read this for the last time, please?
An ordinance amending Washington County Code Sections 2-18.
Okay. I move that this
J.P.
be.
Esser has the floor.
Move this be approved as read.
Okay.
There we go. Thank you.
Now we have a proper motion and a second to approve this ordinance 10.1. Is there any further discussion? Is there any public comment? Seeing none, Ms. Jamie, would you call the roll on 10.1, please?
Ann Harbison.
Yes.
Joe Kiklak.
Yes.
Roddy Lloyd.
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom.
Yes.
Eva Madison.
Yes.
Sue Madison. Joel Maxwell. Joe Patterson. Butch Pond. Bill Ussery. Daniel Balls. Harvey Bowman. Robert Dennis. Lisa Ecke.
This ordinance is adopted. So we'll now go to our committee reports, and at this hour, brevity would be appreciated. I'll recognize, and I'll just say there's no further information or report from the Finance and Budget Committee, so I'll recognize J.P. Ecke for the Personnel Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Personnel Committee met on Monday, March 6th. We had Nelson Driver from Risk Management give us his report on the Employee Health Fund. It's in good shape. Secondly, we had our HR Director, Watson, give us an update on our meeting. And the purpose of our meeting was not to correct specific errors in the handbook, but to prevent problems from happening in the future. Number 3, we addressed ways to show value and appreciation to our county employees for the job that they do for all of us. That was brought up by Justice Dennis. Thank you.
Thank you, J.P. Ecke. J.P. Maxwell, Jail, Law Enforcement, and Courts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It was pretty much business as usual. We heard from Juvenile Detention Center enforcement and detention with their monthly reports, and it caught us up to date. And that as well, we approved and unanimously approved and signed a letter asking the governor to consider Northwest Arkansas, Washington, and Benton counties jointly for one of his crisis stabilization units. So I thank you again for that, and we're still waiting to hear the answer on that. So thank you.
Thank you. J.P. Dennis, County Services.
Thank you, ma'am. We met, and the primary thing that we talked about was the local sewers. And Mr. Baker, no, can't remember right now. But anyway, he came in and addressed us and said that we were collecting money from
Bartlett.
Bartlett? Bartlett?
Yes.
Mr. Bartlett addressed us and said that his folks were paying their extra $2. I think it was $2. But others were not paying their extra $2. And so we're going to look into that and see what's happening at the county level on collecting it. And then we also wanted to delay how many times we meet. We discussed that a little bit. And I think it's a good idea. However, I'll say this. I think there's some things coming on the horizon that we need to meet about. This is going to go farther on the sewer systems. And also, I'm not sure if Red Dirt Pit comes under our jurisdiction or not. Does anybody know that?
Well, any appeal would come to the full quorum court. I don't know that it would come to county services.
Okay. All right. So the sewer systems may come up again, and so we may need to meet next month. Thank you.
And J.P. Bowman for Public Works.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We had Mr. Gales come and discuss what's going on in the roads area and the buildings and grounds. Got great things going on there in both areas, the road department and the gentleman looking after the buildings and grounds came and talked to us about what's going on in those areas. got really positive reports. I'm especially pleased with the things I'm learning about what's going on in the road department, and especially about the new graders coming. So I think that's going to make a tremendous contribution to our county roads. Thank you.
Any other business? JP Madison?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I had a phone call from a member of the local historical society asking, apparently there have been plans made and decided to tear down the building that's just south of the old courthouse on the east side. I know it as the original extension office building a long time ago. But I was just curious if indeed that decision has been made and how much it's going to cost and where the money is coming from. Does anybody here know about the demolition of the building?
The county judge and the county judge's office knows nothing about the demolition of the building. There's not been any decisions made to demo that building. There's been talks, my understanding, There's been talks for years about that becoming a parking lot, but that predates Judge Wood. I mean, I know a lot of people have expressed that, but there have been no decisions made or anything with regard to that, as far as I'm aware.
Thank you.
And Chief Gales is here, and you may ask him, but I'm not aware of that.
Well, perhaps a rumor mill has been at work out there.
There has been nothing came to me concerning the demolition of any buildings at this time since I've been in this position. So could be a good rumor. I don't know.
That's good information. I will call this person back
We get
tomorrow.
a lot of those, Miss Sue. Good rumors.
Thank you.
So as promised, I have circulated a draft proposal for meeting schedules that you should have in front of you. So here are the factors I took into consideration. My recollection was that everyone pretty much said they could meet every other month with some exceptions for special things, but we felt like personnel should continue to meet on a monthly basis because of the regularity of issues that come through personnel. Because of the JSAP meetings that are scheduled, I felt like personnel needed to stay on the same day. So the personnel committee stayed where it is, and you'll see the asterisk where it says JSAP meets earlier that day. I tried to accommodate the folks that had raised a conflict about finance and budget being the Tuesday of the week prior to the Quorum Court meeting, and here are the obstacles. It has to be late enough in the month that the folks in our financial components can close the month. So we can't have it the first week because they won't have time to close the books. We can't have it the same week as Quorum Court because then that means everything is having to be added to the agenda late. So it really needs to be on that week before, but with personnel being kind of firmly put on that Monday because of JSAP, there really isn't another option but to put finance and budget on that Tuesday where it is. So what I decided, though, is because of the bulk of the work that ordinance review does, because we basically just have to stop. We don't just finish an agenda. Our chair usually just says it's time to go. I didn't think that was a great meeting to try to stack, and we didn't have to. And if we're just going to meet every other month, I think the work of the committee will be even more time-consuming when they meet. And I also don't think that that committee will meet forever, I hope. So I left it by itself. So in 1 month, this would just be a proposal for the next 2 months. Ordinance review would be on that first Monday. Personnel would be by itself with the finance and budget on Tuesday. The next month, then, it would sort of be more of a usual schedule with county services and public works together on the first Monday, personnel and jail on the second Monday. But having personnel be by itself on that alternating month would give the committee chairs of jails and public works and county services the option of a slot if you needed to have a special meeting. So this was the best I could do.
It's a good job. Thank you.
Okay. I'd be happy. I mean, things could be rotated. I didn't know. And I actually tried to schedule it because I felt like ordinance review didn't meet in March and should probably meet in April. But county services and public works and jails had all met, and so then I felt like this was the right rotation schedule to begin with. So if we want to do this meeting, we probably need a motion. I don't think we set our committee meetings by ordinance. So if you want to do it now, we probably need to go forward. Otherwise, we can delay it and go on as we are. JP Maxwell.
I would just like to ask to delay it. I think there's one or two things that are coming up that may need to keep the regular order, but all that hasn't all happened yet. So that sounds like JP Dennis also has some things with the sewer system public works. So I kind of hate to lock us into this and automatically cut some of this out right off the bat.
I would say when you think about how soon May 1st is, I think it'll be just fine. Just put them off and make it May 1st and just tell, hey, if you want to bring it forth on May 1st.
And there is the slot if somebody needed to have one on April 10th, if you need to. Any other comments? What's the pleasure of the court? JP Dennis. Okay, JP Dennis has moved that we go ahead and accept this schedule.
Second.
Well, okay, we have a motion and a second, so I guess you can vote against it. If you know. I think there is the extra slot on the 10th, which I hope will. And then also realize this is now puts us back at 4 meetings a month to try to keep our budget with control as opposed to 5. Is there any further discussion? JP Lundstrom?
Well, it just seems to me if Joel has something he needs to do, we could call that meeting, just add it to personnel, just like it is next month. So that can be done quickly. Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? Okay. Any other business? Is there a motion to adjourn? Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Hold on. JP Keeklack.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and any members of the Quorum Court that you might delegate the question, could you give me an update on the procedure for setting and receiving agendas for the Quorum Court meetings and the committee meetings?
I don't know that there is a set procedure for us to receive them. They typically have come out and been published the Friday prior to our meeting, at least for the Quorum Court meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
I think the lack of a Quorum Court secretary is sort of impairing us in that department. So
that's correct.
JP Maxwell. I'm sorry, JP Keeklack, were you done?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Best I can offer you.
Yes, ma'am.
Just
JP
one
Maxwell.
piece of additional information. If you're going on to the website and clicking on the calendar and looking for Quorum Court meetings, they won't be there. So it will only be there if you leave it completely open. If you go look for Quorum Court meetings or committee meetings, you will get a blank calendar. So supposedly IT is working on that, and they know about it at the judge's office, but it is not accurate. So you cannot trust that calendar.
Oh, okay.
Madam Chair, shouldn't the judges, thank you, shouldn't the judge's executive assistant sent out emails to everybody on the agenda before? And is that her area of responsibility? It was before, or is it no longer her area of responsibility?
I don't actually think it's ever been formally part of the judge's executive assistant. It's been part of the Quorum Court secretary position because Ms. Beeks originally occupied the Quorum Court reporter position, secretary position, and then when she was moved to the executive assistant, we had Jessica Ems, and then we had Carly Sandage. And so I think by default, it has fallen to the county judge's secretary. Technically, I think under state law, it falls to the county clerk's office. So I think the judge's office probably is just doing the best they can right now to give us coverage until the secretary position is filled, which, speaking of Ms. Beeks, this is the resolution to honor her, so it's passing around. If you could sign it, please.
Thank you.
J.P. Bowman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was on the site today, and it had meetings listed on the calendar today. So I don't know what's happened since you looked at it, but
Go ahead, JP Maxwell.
They're on there if you don't ask for quorum court meetings or committee meetings. If you don't select that option, you can see some of them that way. But if you actually go in and sort the way you would intuitively do that, they're not in those calendars.
In the search mechanism, I just put in meetings, and the calendar popped up with those populated. So I guess just put meetings in, and then the calendar will pop up with those listings on there.
Well, when I went in, I just clicked on the meetings and the calendar came up. And then I just clicked on tonight on the quorum court meeting, and then it showed me the agenda, and then I could also print and see or click and see the whole packet. That's how I got it. So, but historically, JP Keeklak, so you know that when we've gotten the emails, it's usually been just a link to get to the website to open it up. You still had to we've never actually received the agendas. So, any other business? Now I'll entertain that motion to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no.